Welcome to the Culture Podcast, where we uncover the hidden mechanics of high control groups, their tactics, and their impact. And we speak with the survivors who broke free. My name is Derek, and I'm your host.
My name is Trinity, and I'm also your host. On this podcast, we explore cult life as real people who have lived through the life-changing process of leaving a high control group.
Right now, we have two people on the line. One you know of, his name's Trinity,
Hello.
and the other person you don't know of.
I go by Gork.
So our first guest of the pod is named Gork, and we just basically want to have a conversation. It's our goal to really have a conversational podcast where we chat with you. And this particular podcast is about people who have come out of a high control group or a cult and just kind of hear their story. We've intentionally made a space where we understand that people have kind of been persecuted, and maybe we share in that pain and that persecution, and we just kind of want to walk down that path together. And we really want to dive into Gork. We do want to assure you that Gork is not AI. He is a real human person. Even though it probably would have been easier logistically to just do this in AI.
I'm not Grok. Maybe someday.
But yeah, so before we dive in, I've never met Gork in my entire life, so he could be lying to me about his affiliation with a cult.
You can't start off with a lie.
No. I tease. Gork and I are related, and definitely have known him and lived with him for some time, but have not really talked with him lately about where he's at in his journey post Jehovah's Witness. So I'm really, really excited to kind of learn about, everything, your journey, your thoughts, your reflections, And so usually what I like to start off with the question is, who are you now, Gork, and who were you back then?
That question is so broad, it's almost difficult to answer. And
Correct.
because there's different ways I could approach that question. It's interesting let's start with who I was back then. It's complicated because you're still a person. You still have your preferences. You still like certain things over others. You still have taste and whatever. But you have all of these guardrails over your life that won't let you challenge or indulge or anything that's going to conflict with the whatever you want to call it power system over your life. So it's like you're a person, so I wouldn't take anything away from anybody that's in one of those, but there's all of these mechanisms that control who you can be, and so there's all these parts of yourself that you don't have access to.
Mm-hmm.
And who I am now, that's in some ways harder to answer.
Oh yeah.
It's harder to answer. It's much more complicated.
Yeah, we spoke about how, growing up at Jehovah's Witness, there's a framework that you inhabit where you kind of know all the answers to some extent. And
you pretend that you do.
Yeah, well, at the time you don't think you're pretending.
Yeah.
You legitimately have pity for people who are worldly and are not part of the group that we're part of. And so it's much easier to go like, oh, I can put myself in a box and identify who I am as a person. I have a beginning, a middle purpose, and an end.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's interesting because, yeah, you do feel that confidence, and where that confidence comes from, I mean, that we can get into that. But with Jehovah's Witnesses or any group, whenever I sense that radical approach to it, if I feel comfortable enough with the person and I know them well enough, sometimes I'll pose a question to them that I consider to be difficult. And so, not that long ago, I had a family member I care about that was mentioning all of their spiritual goals and X, Y, and Z, blah, 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 and how Jehovah helped them do this, Jehovah helped them do that. And I just asked them, I said, in a world where certain people can achieve their spiritual goals and Jehovah will help them get there by whatever means he does, what about a young child that is assaulted or murdered or has something just so horrific happen to them that may result in death or maybe not? That is going to fundamentally affect who they are as a person forever.
Simply and easily.
And certain people, their prayers are about, I need to get X amount of hours in ministry to do this. And then you have little children that are crying out for help and they're never going to get help. And so I asked my family member, that person who hasn't even had a chance to become a person yet.
Yeah.
They didn't have to say what was going to happen to them. And so why would Jehovah not intervene in their case? But somebody that's trying to achieve a spiritual goal, he's going to help them. What's the how does that work? And they were like, I just need to do more research on that and get back to you.
And what does that research end up being?
Um,
How do they how does one that in the confines of the Jehovah's Witness structure do their research?
I actually really enjoy this person, so I wasn't gonna, you know what I mean. I'm not gonna crucify them every time I talk to them,
Yeah,
but just felt like it was a graceful way to exit the topic.
sure.
That was my interpretation of that interaction, and
Yeah, you just ultimately know it's never gonna go anywhere, and you do, at least from my opinion, care, and you know what they're in. You know what's happening.
yeah, I know. And here's what's great about this, especially this podcast right now, is that like if you don't mind me sharing,
No, I don't mind.
both of you guys, when I left and you were still in it, you guys were kind of dicks to me. And
We have similar stories. Yeah.
and so to come full circle, I'll share something if Trent, if you don't mind me sharing.
Please.
And I know that the recordings were terrible, so I'm not gonna. I in a way I kind of get what he's saying, but I remember I would just record demos by myself on my computer, and I would just send them out to all the people on my email. And Trent just replied one day. I think this was like 2012 or something around there. And he's like, I don't want to hear your dumb recordings. Stop sending these.
I'm so sorry, man.
No, it's funny. It's funny now.
It's funny now.
Um, it's very funny now, and with Derek, it's a little more subtle, but it's the same. It's the same kind of thing where you feel the resistance, and you don't want there to be resistance. And I think that's one of the devastating things about that culture is that there are people that if we never ever talked about religion, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay.
This is a theme previously discussed.
Well, there's something I want to ask you guys, but just so the listeners have some context. I was born into the religion and I got baptized when I was 15, and then pretty quickly after I got baptized, I started homeschooling. And so like some people, they're Jehovah's Witness, and it is who they are, but it doesn't govern every aspect of their life. They're willing to, maybe do things that aren't encouraged, but it's fine. And then there are the other people, like I was, that are doing their damnedest every single day to try their best to be as devout as they can.
Yeah, you do start to learn that there are levels of people's indoctrination,
Yeah.
and like they're in.
And so that was me. So I started, doing as much ministry as I could, and I auxiliary parent pioneered for a couple of years, read my Bible every day, and I now look back at my personality, and it's just very cringe, and it's very embarrassing, and then I'm shortening things as I go along, but then by the time I was 21 years old is when I started to leave, and I had like this kind of we never had sex or anything, but I had like a kind of secret relationship because we knew the culture that people know you're dating. You've been dating 6 months. People are like, when are you getting married? You know,
What what uh what was his name?
his name was Derek Duvall. um,
So when you okay, let's trace some steps. So you were baptized.
So the breakup of that is what eventually led to losing my faith. That's what I was going to say. But I was just going to say that I left a lot earlier than you guys. That's what I was just Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, so you were baptized when you were 15. Do you recall your mindset at 15 and what kind of drove you towards that and kind of where you were at mentally?
Absolutely.
That's the only question I had. Next question.
I do remember. Thank you.
No.
Um, no, I
No, yeah, if you could expand on that, that'd be great.
yeah, I was going to say like for me, I think what led to me becoming radical because up until maybe about 12, 13, was going to meetings and doing some service, but there's nothing fervent about it. There was no zeal, to use a word they would use. And so it was really that period of time that I started to engage. But really, what it was I had an abusive stepfather and a dysfunctional family, and so I had an elder who I think to this day is actually a good person who took an interest in me, started studying with me, and became a genuine father figure. And I'm somebody who's never really had one.
Same for myself. Apologies.
So I remember going to his house and spending time with his family, and I'm like, oh, there can be good families out there, you know.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be what I know. And so every opportunity that I could to go over there or go in service with them or whatever I was taking. And so I was getting all of this praise and validation from more and more people the more I started getting involved, going out in service, commenting, doing all that stuff. So I just
I imagine there was probably a part of you that was like, "Man, this is what life could be like."
life, yeah, this is what life should be like. That's how I felt at the time, and to be fair, like I'm still grateful to him, you know. He religion aside, like he was just a good person, you know. And I even remember, my mom told him about Don hitting me, and he sat down with him, read him a scripture, and he's like, this isn't how you do it."
Most wouldn't do that from what I can see from the history of witness elders.
Maybe not, maybe not. And that's what this is something that's very, very complicated to bring up, but I'm going to do it anyways. Another person that was largely influential in my life, who I have a lot of respect for, did something bad to you. And what do we do with that information? Where do we go with that? This is somebody that I got into certain kind of folk music, indie music, whatever it is, and I'm talking about Gil.
Oh, sure.
And you have your experience with Gil, and they both sit there at the same time.
Yeah,
And I,
that's the thing I've come to learn about
yeah,
life and everything is full of nuance and everything is full of multiple interpretations and thoughts. And it's like you don't have necessarily an evil person. You might have like a bad moment or a bad thought. It's like it's just like a melting pot of like you can have many positive thoughts about someone like Gil and still carry these other thoughts of what he did to me. And I'm sure it's very similar for other people in our lives. The complicated thing about Gil, which obviously the podcast listeners aren't going to know, but Gil was an elder and exuded his control over me. And you come to find out, oh, he was kind of doing it his own way, and really complicated my life for a long time. And at this point, with the way he was kind of pushed over and kind of moved out and kind of moved along, everyone loves Gil. Like there's no.
yeah. I spent a lot of time with Gil, like a lot.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
And he does kind of bend the rules, and he does, but that he's also somebody that makes converts
Oh, I mean, if you wanted to start a cult, he would be the one to do it.
because of that. Because of that. Because I've seen him on a Bible study, and he get like they're going through the what the Bible really teaches or whatever book. He can tell the person's just not into it. They're not really, and so he's like, "Let's close the book. Let's talk scripture now." And he knows, like, I need to get to this person's heart in order to do what I got to do, and the book's not doing.
He's masterful.
He's very masterful, and I don't think he's doing it out of malice.
No,
And that was the kind of elder or ministerial servant that I wanted to be. I wanted to be like that. I wanted to be somebody that had my own knowledge of scripture that I could always rely on and not have to need the book. And so, yeah.
and I think I saw that in your actions because we did share the same congregation where
Hmm.
you were the one. Trent and I were talking earlier. You were the one that was going out in service all the time. Constantly reading your Bible and also moving up the corporate ladder.
Yeah, it was tough because I, I went to NWEC, which was like a weird thing because it's not Jehovah's Witness sanctioned at all. But it was basically a charter school that was like probably 80% Jehovah's Witness. And I remember as a teenager when I started getting into it, I started reading Bible, starting to get into this. I started disconnecting with people, and these were people that were witnesses. And it's because, again, to use the Jehovah's Witness word, they didn't have the zeal, they didn't have the passion.
Mm.
So when I would get excited or whatever, I didn't care. You know, they didn't care at all. And so that was one of those things that again led me to just getting into the congregation, older people, and focusing on those people. And so then,
Yeah, you always hung on around older ones.
yeah, and to be fair, I think that if you are looking for wisdom or adages or anything that's going to stick with you, teenagers aren't going to give it to you.
No.
And a model that I followed as inspirational in that religious capacity for some time,
I
genuinely.
don't know about practically because it's the Jehovah's Witnesses.
I always found immense depth in the older ones and really connected with them, like intellectually, and they trained me how to think logically and practically.
Yeah.
But there's got to be some. But I just, but yeah. So that all of that kind of fed into itself, where I started getting more and more devout, and yeah,
Was there ever any moment in time where in these early years you never had doubt? You never had, like, you were all in. 15 baptized all in?
I was all in. And here's the interesting thing about it, and I mentioned earlier that I had a question for you guys, and I still have it. I'm not going to forget it. But when you go out in the ministry, and your genuine dedication is to convert people, when you have people that are their own Bible students, or whatever word you want to use, aficionados, whatever, you have to somewhat engage them in good faith, right? Because if you don't engage them in good faith, you're not going to be able to acknowledge their points, counteract their points, whatever it is. And so,
Yeah.
like I said, it was the heartbreak that led to me questioning what I was doing. But there was certain moments, nothing devastating, but there was certain moments where you meet somebody who has a biblical perspective when you're going out in service 50 plus hours a month, and you realize, like, okay, there are some people out there, right? Majority of Christians don't read the Bible, so that makes you feel confident. And but then you meet the one or two that like know their stuff and have things that they're saying you haven't heard before, and you're like, okay, that's something. Doesn't mean it's doubt, but it's something.
Yeah. Yeah, they're like bringing up the Council of Nicaea or something. And you're like, what? What's going on here?
I always loved and really respected that every time. It was so fun.
When you had somebody in the ministry that knew more or about something.
Yeah, when someone knew more than surface level and could spar with me, I'm like, bring it on. Let's do it in good faith, and I'll show you why I'm right from the Bible. It was so fun.
Yeah, I remember. I think maybe I was 20 or so, 19. I don't know, but I remember going to. I think it was Village Inn. I think, but there's these dudes like reading their Bibles, and they. It's funny because they had kind of an alternative rock look, but I guess just a lot of Christian rockers are like that. But we just started talking scriptures with them, and then like it was like a really healthy back and forth, and they were obsessed, oddly enough, with the Trinity.
Who isn't?
So that handsome devil. And that's what they wanted to keep talking about. But I just remember going back and forth. I'm like, okay, these guys, they're in it, you know. And so you have those moments where I wouldn't say leads to doubt. It just leads to like, oh, there's a lot of stuff I don't know. I got to keep studying. That kind of feeling.
Do you feel like I feel like you and Trent may be more aligned this way than I am, but do you feel like there is something internally in you when you're like, I have enough knowledge and insight and ability to, as Trent said, spar, that kind of ignites you?
Sparring is fun.
It's spoken like a brother in arms.
It is fun. It's very fun. It's very, very fun, and it's religion, anything. And even now, I still like to spar.
Yeah.
Whether it's movies or TV or whatever it is.
I think the challenge that a lot of people face in sparring is they have a containment that they're in terms of what they're sparring about. But when you're sparring about ideologies and religious constraints,
Right.
From a shared framework of understanding. based in fact and rationality.
Yeah, from that shared framework, like you literally only can the win is to take them out of their framework.
Yeah.
And what a win.
What's an example of that?
Well, if like someone has an ideology that they truly believe in the Trinity, and it's like there's a core structure in that belief, and you find a way to remove that belief from their core identity, what a magnificent feeling.
Absolutely.
And witnesses are master practicers of this, and they like pass it on via word of mouth and strategically because it's fun to do so. Like seriously, well crafted questions is like an amazing thing. Like, is God his own father or is he his own son? Is a very just like rational question to ask anybody to quickly discern their ability to spar.
Absolutely, I agree with that. I think the interesting thing is I don't have any data to support this. I mean, the information that JW's put out is yikes, but it doesn't seem to me like they make a lot of like actual converts of like what are Jehovah's Witnesses? You know, it's like
Oh, for sure.
so very few. It's just mostly like, oh, my grandmother was a witness, or my mom was a witness for a while. The people that do come like, have some child experiences with JWs. So you know, I don't.
Well, it's such a horrible structure because, the Jehovah's Witnesses, unlike the Mormons who got it way more right, are like, don't have a lot of kids, don't go to college,
Yeah,
don't do all these things. And it's like, gosh, you see how much the Mormon faith is growing. It's like have a bunch of kids, be educated. It's like, gosh, and then you're converting and then adding all these more. But I do agree with you. I don't think most people are converted from a doorstep
no.
and watching a video or whatnot. But I think there's something interesting there where it's more of a something built into us where it's like we're not trying to save anyone, we're trying to win. Like
Yes, yes, yes.
uh, uh,
Yeah, and if you win, you're like, I saved them, you know, or I'm helping them.
yeah, yeah, in all intents and purposes, like I'm so glad that I saved him. Or you also have the like, oh, I can record more hours. I can record, the fact that I have a Bible study.
It's so funny now because I don't keep up too intensely with whatever's going on with JWs here and there, but this is what I wanted to talk to you guys about because I'm really curious about this.
I'm ready. I'm ready for the questions.
And if you don't know, you don't know. That's okay. But like, there's been this. I don't know what the phrase would be to accurately describe it, but there's been not a doctrinal softening, but a cultural softening
Yeah.
that's been going on. And so, men can have beards now, and the ministry hours are like 15 hours for auxiliary, and it's like I don't know what it is, 30 or 40 or whatever for regular pioneer, whatever it is. And there's all of this stuff that they're doing to try to make it easier
Yeah.
to be a witness. And I think I from somebody told me recently that like in a lot of congregations the disfellowshipping process isn't as intense as it used to be or whatever. And I'm curious what you guys make of that.
Oh, I take great offense to the watering down of the message that I so stringently learned to abide by and regurgitate to other people by forced pattern enforcement.
Why are they doing it?
Well, they just want to spread their thought pattern, and it makes a coefficient system. Like everybody self-sustains and self-heals and self-regenerates, and that's an effective system. It's like so easy.
Yeah, I think
That's all.
um
It's no ill intent. It's just survival, I think.
yeah, I think one of the questions Trent and I posed previously is do you think some of the leaders know? Are they truly believers? And maybe there's a mixture of both.
Maybe strategic thinkers who are also thinking like Gork and I seem to have naturally tuned to in years past, naturally over time.
Yeah, I think to answer the question on my part, like I think there's like a great softening and it's been happening since COVID where like things are drastically decreasing. I think that they
And that can be a loaded statement. And I think it's fair to say in the recent past, in general too.
But it's cultural. Because I've listened to some of the meetings with my mom, and it's still there's doctrinally it's pretty much the same. It's just that culturally it's different.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that culture is changing, and I think there is more of a mindset of like, let's not be as strict because if you want to bring more people in or keep people in, you need to present an environment that's doesn't seem too culty.
I would say that whenever you water down the message, you make it more generally acceptable and easier to process, yet its message is diluted.
I mean, think about the times we had growing up where we had intense Bible studies about like the Revelation book and the 1914 prophecy and the generations. And we would go to meeting, they're like, "Oh, it's that meeting where we have to do the question and answers."
Yeah, that was an incredible time in the 90s or thousands.
Yeah, I will say I always struggled with the Revelation book
Yeah.
because that's just a heap of nonsense. But at the time, I didn't understand it. I'm like, I guess this is a symbol for this.
Yeah.
But there are really interesting, deeper stuff that you can get into, and if you really want to, be academic about it, there's lots of things in the Bible you can study.
We're open to that for sure, but in the means of like
I mean, I'm not a Christian, so I'm not,
in the means of the podcast, we have a structure, but like, yeah, we're open to thinking about that.
Well, what I'm saying is, that if you want to get into the weeds on that stuff, there's more weeds than anyone can count.
Yeah,
You know,
forever.
but now
But the witnesses don't really want to do that anymore.
they don't.
Yeah, that's what I miss because I feel like I was within my ethical bounds as a witness to present myself as a neutral party who could operate in good faith for real understanding. Like at one point, and you could hear Mormons or other groups, random strangers to different capacities, and just like interface with them neutrally to just see where they were at and if they were open. And I don't know if that's the case for witnesses today because they haven't really been trained the same way. It's like more surface level and like way less of an intense forced system.
I'm of many minds about it, but I think they're kind of putting themselves in a position where if they maintain a rigid structure about some of these foundational beliefs, the more and more they keep talking about it, the more it puts them in a situation where they have to modify.
Watered down, less enforceable, more open.
So the 1914 prophecy, the generational beliefs, there's things where it's like, well, if you just stop talking about it, like there's going to be generations of young children. It's like, wait, what's 1914 about?
But it's kind of predictable, though, isn't it? When you zoom out, you're like, this was inevitable. this was how. This was always coming.
Yep. Which is a complete opposite flip because there is a point, like we talked about, where like they're rapidly firing information all the time strategically to reinforce it.
Yeah.
And that totally changes.
Well, I think the thing that's fascinating is part of this where it's like, yes, we've gotten to a point where there's an understanding of how things are going,
Yeah.
and we feel like we're rational and logical people, but it's like, but the people that are in a high control group or locked into, in this instance, Joe's witnesses, they also genuinely feel like they're rational, logical people that are self-aware.
It's readily apparent to some, but we're finding it's not to others, and that's why that's part of this.
And that's the fascinating thing where it's like, what's the break point where how many things get put across your plate or your desk where you eventually go like, this is the thing that makes me question or break.
Well, to circle back to before we started recording, we briefly mentioned emotional intelligence, and I think that's the crucial aspect of this. Is that with a certain amount of emotional intelligence, you will recognize like, oh, there are these areas that I'm not willing to address or consider, and I'm not willing to consider them because the stakes of me realizing something I don't want to realize is too expensive. I can't afford
Sure.
to go there. So I'm subconsciously you make that decision.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's a preservation method.
I'm not going there. And so there are lots of witnesses, any cult, any religion, of people that are capable of rationality, capable of logic. Logic is one of those things I think is a word that gets overused. I'm a logical person about what? There are arguments if you go into academia of certain types of logic that are against each other. Which side is right? They both have incredible points and have thought about the other side. So when you say logic, what are you saying?
Yeah.
But so I do think that there are those people that have those moments on certain issues where they can dig deep and they can go there, but they don't have the emotional intelligence to go to the places like we talked about with a young child or these other things. They don't have the answer.
Yeah. Well, and it's if you really look at something, it's like there's something built into us to preserve ourselves. So if you live in an environment where you're taught a rule like gravity, and then immediately someone teaches you something that counters that, you're like, well, wait, I thought I was given this foundation about what gravity means, and now you're telling me it's something different, and then you have to change that core belief And then like, okay, so you live in that new belief. And then moments later, whatever, then someone gives you a new idea. You're eventually like, what's going on here? I can't keep this framework in place. And
I think you're right, and I think they're not wrong in the sense that when you open that corridor.
well, I just think that's the problem. So I think people learn to go like, okay, I'm going to lock this in and I'm going to preserve this state of thought process. I can't keep opening up that corridor. And the moment someone tries to open it, it's like, nope, nope, this is too important. So I choose to either inactively or actively not listen.
It's gnarly. It's not inviting. It's not warm. It's you get to a place where you find warmth, where you find comfort, where you find these things that are beautiful and transcendent, and then you never had before.
No.
But you have to go through, like, it's like the Shawshank Redemption. You got to climb through all of that shit
Yep.
to get to any sunlight, to get to anything where you can just be your own person.
Mm-hmm.
And that period of climbing through shit is brutal.
So I want to actually talk about that. So just taking a step back. So you got out a little bit before us. So you're better than us. And you
No, I'm not.
oh, I'm just I'm teasing. But what was that like for you? Like what was that kind of wake up process, that going through the shit, through the muck, people around you, family, friends, and just kind of that wake up process? What was the thing? And yeah, just kind of take me through that journey for a little bit.
I like that question because it's something I don't get to explain to a lot of people, because most people don't have the reference to understand what it's like. But when I left,
Yeah.
I went through what I would call my angry atheist phase.
Okay. Yep. Yep. Yep.
And where I every single night I was doing research on biblical mythology and translation and all these, and a part of it was I really wanted to arm myself with new knowledge.
Yeah.
And the other part of it was like all my friends and all these people, they're gonna call me, they're gonna ask about it, and I gotta be ready. And they didn't. They didn't. They didn't. None of them did. I had maybe two friends, maybe, that I talked to about it with it. I remember a friend of mine who I think he's inactive right now. He messaged me when he found out about my health situation, and he said he's inactive. But I remember when I told him, and he was one of my best friends, because I said I've been doing this research, and he's like, "Research? The society does the research for you." And I was like, "Can you hear yourself? Can you hear yourself?"
So earnestly, without any weirdness, like so just off, right, boom. What do you mean?
And so what I went through at that time was weird, because I'm like, well, we're the academic religion. We're the one that, we study the Bible. We're here for this. So the J Dubs like feel like I don't know something. All right, they're gonna come prepared. I met with three elders. Here's the thing. I want what I didn't realize how offensive this was at the time, but I wanted to make it a point. I'm not leaving because I want to go bang chicks, or I want to go party, or I want to do any of these things. I am having a fundamental problem with this. And what I didn't realize was that was so much more
Mhm.
offensive than the other people who just want to go party or whatever, or have a worldly girlfriend or whatever it is. And so,
It's been used as a scapegoat for a long time in a lot of means.
Mm. Yep. Yeah, I would imagine it's easier to justify like, oh, you just are, your sexual desires, Satan's gotten you, the sin of Adam and Eve. But like you don't believe?
oh, absolutely. And so I met with three elders, and the first one was this guy who ended up later. I don't know how long he did, but he ended up going to prison for molesting a boy like 20 something years ago.
Oh.
And he was like a fire and brimstone type of, like, providing overseer, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I asked him about, like, what about this, like, proposed pre-Christian mythology that has all this overlap with the Bible? He's like, well, Satan, sets up traps. There's nothing to think about. He's just kind of like, he's like, there's nothing to indulge.
Like a resigned look of recognition because maybe he understood.
So he was just like matter of fact about it. And then the second one, I was like, just keep reading your Bible, keep praying. He was the opposite approach, just very soft. Just you'll get through it. It's gonna be fine. And I'm like, you're not hearing me, okay? And then the third was Gil, and Gil was the only. the only one who tried.
Oh, yeah.
We spent like 3 multiple hour conversations on the phone. And I remember the first time, because I wasn't happy about this. I wasn't like, yeah, F those guys. It wasn't like that. It was like, this has been my home. I have a lot of really, really great friends. I don't want to leave, but I can't, but it's not something I can do if I don't believe in it. And so the first time I met with Gil, I remember sitting down with him, and I was a mess, emotionally. And I said, I'm having serious doubts. And he said, well, usually I find there's one of three things people having doubts in. One, it's God. Two, it's the Bible. Or three, it's the organization. What are you having doubts in? And I said, the Bible. And the look on his face, I'll never forget, it broke my heart. I can see that he was kind of acknowledging that he's probably going to lose me.
Sure. You're genuinely searching for something.
I don't know if he understood. I think he understood that's the hardest one.
Whose right do you think it is to determine that?
It is hard to go from there, and he still made an effort, and again, like you know, I think he probably said some things that a witness wouldn't normally say. And he one of the things he said that I've never thought I heard like a elder say, it was like, he's like, maybe these things aren't perfect in the way that you see perfect, but maybe they're perfect in their what humanity needs.
Full of imperfect people. Yeah.
And I was just
Like
like,
us,
well, you can
yet not.
exactly. And I was just like, well, you could say that about any religion, really.
Yeah.
And so, and yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say if I mean he has such a power usage of the Bible, if you're having a problem with his framework for arguments, it's kind of hard to go from there.
and they don't. They will oblige with laws as they have to, but when they don't, they won't. And they will always try to find a sneaky way out of it. So it was a really emotional time, and I was kind of hoping they're gonna talk me back into this. They're gonna get me what That's really what I was coming. And that never happened. And then I left, and nobody really called. I remember talking to somebody who now is out of it. I haven't talked to them in years, but they I told them I was having doubts,
Yeah.
and they basically kind of told a couple people that I was like becoming an apostate. And I'm like, I'm not trying to stop anyone from getting baptized. I'm not with at the convention. You do get your distance. Yeah.
Well, it is an imperfect organization run by imperfect men.
I think that I think apostate is just equals to trash bin for bad ideas within, that could corrupt that organization.
Well, one thing that's very, very cult like is that they take words and then envelop them in a new meaning. So if you look up the word apostate, it's somebody that's left their religion, right? But it's usually spoken about somebody that's left. That's like that's But they when they say apostate, what they're saying is like, those guys at the convention with the signs, when and they're talking about.
Yeah, I think what happens is there's when you start to notice a disconnection or a questioning or a pondering, just wanting to kind of know things, I think there's just a level of kind of fear and kind of we need to disconnect, we're uncertain. And that's throughout all of these experiences where like Trent and I have felt that when we were still in and manifested that. And I'm sure you did for other people when you were younger and you maybe saw other people kind of disconnect. You just don't really know what to do, so you just kind of get your distance.
And it's like, I don't, anybody can do whatever they want. I don't care. Like, it's not about that.
Okay, wait. That was a great thing you just said. So anyone can do anything they want. I don't care. That's a good view to have. I have that.
Yeah.
Did you feel freedom to leave that place at any point? Were you scared at any point to do so?
To leave?
Yeah.
Oh, this is the hardest decision I ever made. Yeah. I had nothing. I had no worldly friends. I had nothing. I had nothing. So to go into the blind unknown, I had no, because I still hadn't deprogrammed. You can recognize that a religion isn't true, but all of those, again, talking about emotional intelligence, all of those beliefs that they kind of geared into your wiring or whatever you want to call it, you got to unpack those too.
Sure.
And that takes a long, long time. And so I left the religion thinking, man, the world is just a really horrible, immoral place, and it can be. It often is, but it's
Has it turned out to also be beautiful?
yes, yes, absolutely,
Good.
yeah, absolutely.
We
It's
agree.
it's it's more of everything, right? And
Do you think it's the and, like, both bad and good existing together?
yes, yeah, yeah. That's it's nuanced, right? And so, but that period where I left and I didn't really have any friends, it's good and bad, but it was just a lonely time, and it's not easy to engage, you know, with strangers on that kind of level when you don't have any experience doing that. Your mindset is like, okay, I'll be friendly to this person with the interest that I can minister to them.
I felt that self same way. Like, there are times where it was the most horrendous torture and pain on my human soul, and yet there were times where it was also very pleasurable, especially intellectually.
Yeah, yeah, we were talking about that too. There's just certain things where you don't realize that your actions that you're doing when you're younger, you create no structure to have any support when you leave because you're always so separate.
You are separate. Everything is about that. It's like all the terminology again is um, the truth, and all. It's just all of these things that are words that everybody uses.
So your thing, your a lot of your thing was the doctrine and the Bible, and that was a major thing that challenged you. Was there anything about the way the group was run, like the structure of being in a congregation, anything like, I don't know, like a fear tactic or a shame or guilt tactic that you constantly struggled with as well?
I wish I could say that. No, I mean my experience as a JW was just like, man, shit's awesome. Like in the sense of it, in the congregation context. But I want to go back to the doctrine part of it because what inspired the investigation
Oh, yeah, yeah.
into that stuff was was inspired by a kind of an emotional breakdown.
Did you find some golden plates or something, or?
Yeah, I changed my name to Joseph Smith. No, I went through a really really bad breakup,
Mm.
and uh, basically was making plans to move to another state. I could tell you a 2-hour version of the story. I won't, but I was making plans to move to another state, and mind you, again, I'm like 19 at this point. Like, yeah, yeah, we're gonna wait like 5 years to get married, just so we're not too young. It's like 24. Come on. Anyways, and then I found out that she was sleeping with a guy that she worked with, and his wife was pregnant,
Mm.
and then he ended up leaving his pregnant wife for her,
Mm.
and I didn't I didn't know about any of this, and then she ghosted me, and then I found out through other people, and then she just told me f off, and in my mind it's like we were kind of already married. We already had things locked in. We already knew what we were going to do. So it wasn't, and this is somebody that offered to blow me multiple times. I'm like, no, 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 we got to wait.
Wow.
And yeah, I regret that. But it, that devastation of I was
Wow.
that
I regret that now.
I've wrestled with similar problems, dude, my entire life, and brother, I feel your humanity, and I see you in a way that I keenly understand and that Derek will attest to privately and will discuss later.
thank you. I that devastation though of like I was so certain, so convinced, I was 100% that I had found my person, and I obviously haven't. Somebody that betrayed me in a serious way. That led to this question of what else am I wrong about? What else can I be wrong about?
Reconsidering core foundations that you had built on that no longer served you.
Relationships, all that could go into it. But number one was like, what do I believe and why do I believe it?
Yeah, there's an interesting thing that it's like, gosh, you just don't even think about this stuff, but it's like, I mean, how is it likely that our Christian God in America is the God when, like a Hindu God or, just any other God, a Buddhist sensibility, like it's like we just happen to get it right because we're in America in the West in the time frame we're at. it just seems highly illogical of the hundreds and thousands of gods that there are. We just happen to grow up and be in the right system.
Yeah, and then you go down that road, and you know, we are where we are.
I think that there's inherent truths that are self-evident that are just not as self-evident as they used to be to the common people, in many ways.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is going to be a little more philosophical, but I think it seems like for most of human existence, and I mean the whole timeline, most people were just trying to get through.
I love your ability to comprehend the human condition, dude.
They trying to survive. They got married young. They had to do anything that they could do just to get by. And there's large chunks of time where people most people are dead by 50 or 60 or whatever it is, and so their lifespan is not what we have now. And so now we have all of this luxury, and the dark side of luxury. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was to say we have idle time to think and philosophize and do art and
Yeah, and so we don't have the same struggles, and the worst struggles now. I mean, are horrible, but like it doesn't really compare to 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, just information to access to information equally is an equalizer.
Yeah, and so with this, like I said, I don't know what luxury may not be the right word. Privilege, maybe it might be a better word. But comes this ability to investigate, look into this question, and that spurs on all these things we're talking about. I think for most of time, they couldn't do that.
yeah.
You know?
Well, and it's also like if you think about, a long time ago without certain privileges and access to we have now to data and information, it's really easy for you to go like, oh, it's raining, therefore it must be some sort of like entity or being or God, the rain god.
That too, yeah.
It's a lot easier to say that than like, oh, well, it must be science. Like that philosophy, that mindset just doesn't even exist.
But yet, I argue that it is still profound to seek meaning in why it rains. And humanists have tried to do that simply for a long time and imperfectly.
For sure.
What method do you prefer of reasoning?
Well, the scientific method's like 600 years old or something like that. So we haven't even scratched the surface of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been thousands of years we've been doing stuff. Science is like, yeah, it's like 600 years old, basically. There's versions of science, but not the science that we now know, the standards that we have of how you prove something. We didn't have that.
So where do you, based on Trent's question, like after you've kind of left, and I don't want to, skip past this if there's more kind of to dive into that process of leaving because I think that's really important. But where do you find yourself landing on that, where you kind of think ideology and just kind of your view of life?
Or how you discern truth?
Yeah, I think the thing that makes most people uncomfortable is I don't know.
Yeah.
And having the confidence to say I don't know. I, I don't believe in any fundamentalist religion. I don't think I ever will. And I can look at I think the thing that's really beautiful that I can do now is Christianity or whatever. I can look at a story, and if I'm looking at it as a parable or whatever, I can try to find value in that story.
Yeah.
I don't need to think about did this person exist or what was this, or I don't need to go through a fact checking mission. I probably know, yeah, it didn't happen, or it's
But what was the maybe meaning behind the story? What were they trying to do? Yeah.
what is the meaning behind the story? Yeah, and I think you can get carried away with that. My hot take is I think like Jordan Peterson gets crazy carried away with that, whereas like the metaphor is all that matters, and it's like no, no, no. No,
Mhm.
there's no, there's more to it than that. Um,
It's so wild how, an interpretation of say a scripture in this instance is like up to how you want to use it. And it's like, oh, in this moment it's a a real life event, or in this moment it's like, yeah, it's meant to be a parable, and it's like it's so open ended that it's like you can build this kind of way of thinking about the Bible in any way you shape.
You can, and I think if you actually read the Bible as straightforward as you can, and you study literature, you'll see different types of literature in the Bible, right? So you read Genesis, and it reads like folklore, it reads like mythology
Hmm.
because it straight up is, right?
Yeah.
And then you read Deuteronomy or something else, and it's much more historical, much more this, more that. And so you read these different parts of the Bible, and it's like, okay, these are different human beings in different time periods with different sensibilities, writing a different style.
Yep.
And so when you look at it that way, you're actually, I think, more free to interpret it in a way that might be closer to what it actually is. But it also, we also don't have a lot of knowledge that we should have. That's the thing that sucks about humanity, is that like we don't have most of history recorded, and then the people that do record it
Hmm.
probably have their own political agenda. So
Yeah, ain't that the truth? Yeah, they have their own lens of how they're recording it.
they do. They actually, it's like a fact. It's like, but to look at the whole Bible is literally true. It's just, it's like a mess.
I love how you think, Gork.
The what is it they say? The victors often write the history books. So it's like you're not going to necessarily hear the side of the of the ones that were, stampeded upon in order to write those books. But I do find comfort, and Trent and I have talked about this. I do find comfort in those people that find religion that works for them, provides them peace and hope for their future. Ultimately, whatever they need, I'm very thankful that they were able to find that, whatever it was, whether it be Christianity or something else, as long as they're not really hurting someone else and doing kind of these off the wall things that are just like, wow, you're willing to bomb yourself for your beliefs and kill others, or something drastic of that, or even something more subtle, which is, could be a whole topic in and itself. But I just feel like if that's what is helping you get through life and recover from maybe alcoholism, abuse, or abusive relationships or whatever, I'm all for it.
oh yeah, I don't care what people believe, because nobody knows. Not even atheists, agnostics, anybody.
It's in a constant state of flux, agreed. And impressionable, always.
It's only a problem when they exert these boundaries that have judgment in them. And I understand why, though. Like, it's hard. You read the Bible, there's plenty of judgment in it.
Yeah, it's it's complicated. And when you say that term boundary, is that boundary also could be hurting someone? That's kind of the problem with it also.
Boundaries are restricting.
And that could be identified as one of those subtle things where it's like, oh, as a woman, I have to wear this garb. I have to wear this thing over my head or whatever. I can't fully kind of dress the way I want. And it's like those type of things. It's like, well, this is based off your interpretation of the scriptures that you're reading. And it's like, so that woman now loses a sense of her own identity, which can be damaging. And that's
It's part of her identity she doesn't get to form.
correct.
And I after went to dinner the other night after my last radiation, and one of my nieces was there, who's now a JW and all about it, and she's like regular pioneer. And I give her a hard time. I mean, she wasn't offended, but I was like, regular pioneer in 2025, that's nothing. Like,
I res-
you don't know you don't know what that is, first of all. And and then I can't remember something else was said, and I don't remember why I said this, but I was like, well, if you're going by the Bible, there's men up here and there's women down here. And she's like, that's not true. And I was like, well, put on a head garb and then I'll listen.
Which is framing the witnesses taught us to believe that is provable by Bible strict interpretation and many translations, by the way.
It's in there. Come on.
That's hilarious.
Well, Paul commands you to do it too. It's like, if a woman's going to lead the service or whatever it is, she's got to have a head garb on.
Yep.
There's no way around it.
He was pretty intentional in his directions.
Yeah, which is how it was in that area of the world at that time the Bible was written. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always going to struggle with that because it's so core to the way someone raised, is that's just how it is. And some of them are like, it's fine. Like if you look into like an Orthodox Jewish, like high kind of control system of how they live, and it's like the women in those groups are basically just baby makers from my interpretation of what I see, and they don't really have a lot of the same freedoms as the men have.
And that sexism is deeper than Jehovah's Witnesses. That's deeper than even Christianity. Like that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's thousands of years of that. But yeah, you're right.
The whole set of podcasts entirely.
But for most of them, they're like, I'm okay with that. Like it's my life purpose to rear children and not be able to sing and dance and do the things that men can do because I have an important role.
Yeah, we barely scratched the surface.
As we do close out, and maybe we can have you back on some more to chat, because we barely scratched the surface, and Trent's time is very precious.
Yeah.
How how do you kind of view the chapter in your life now? Like, how has your perspective changed? Like, obviously, there's some other things in your life now that is its own topic, but just overall, back to that kind of original question, how are you now versus what you've been through and what you were? What are your thoughts?
How am I now in terms of spirituality?
How are you now, like in this chapter of your life? Like you've now been out a long time. You've had ups and downs. You've had the freedom to do whatever you want, make every decision be yours, and live with the consequences. How are you feeling about your decision to leave and kind of live your own free life as you see fit?
Oh yeah, I mean the decision to leave, like I said earlier, was the hardest decision I've ever made, but it was the best decision I've ever made. And so there is, in a way, I do acknowledge that if you live in a system that governs all basic major decisions and all that stuff, there is a simplicity to that, and there's something enviable about that. But intellectually, I was never going to be that, and so I feel good, I guess. Like I wouldn't, I don't even spiritually. I think maybe I would just agnostic's the only thing I can use in the sense that I strongly believe that there are fundamental aspects of nature that we haven't even tapped into and don't even understand. And the implications of that are gigantic. But this idea of a personal God who has this personal code of how you need to be, yeah, I'm never going to jive with that.
I mean, this is kind of very pertinent, but what's your viewpoint now on mortality?
Dying. Um,
Because I know for me, like it was so easy if someone died around me. We had the answers. You have a comfort system, you have a hope system, you have this idea of like, I may see you again, my friend, my brother, or other religions, you're going to be up in heaven with the angels. There's an easy comfort system to if you have someone that has a loved one around you, where you can instantly offer comfort, and that whole system has been taken away from me,
hmm.
where I don't have that ideology, I don't have that mindset. I can't really offer you a lot of comfort. I can find a way, and I've worked through that process in time and still do. But I'm just wondering what you think about that.
That's a hell of a question.
It's just an easy closeout question.
That is a question. It's difficult in the sense that yeah, it's one of those tragic things that there is no way around. I mean, Kyle, what happened to Kyle? That's going to haunt me for the rest of my life. There are certain things that happen to people that are awful, but that's why we have religion. So that's the thing. Uh, when I'm saying man-made, doctrinal, fundamentalist, all this stuff is because of that fear. Is that nobody just can accept that life is fragile and thing. I personally don't want to live forever. I know that maybe sounds stupid, but I think there's a lot of beauty in life because of how sensitive and frail it is. And I don't want to lose that. And even though there are these moments that are incomprehensible, it's the way it's always been. And um, it's just one of those things that I understand that people want to see their loved ones again, and people want hope, and people want that. I think that bring it to this life. That's what I say. And it's again, it's not satisfying to hear.
I love you so much, Gork.
Live your life fully, as much as possible, because it may be the only one you have.
I think what I will say about JWs is the thing that does bother me is that all of their, I've been to many, all of their, I don't know what you got,
Memorial services.
memorial services, people that passed away, they're just advertisements.
It's horrible. Yeah. Yep.
It actually disgusts me.
It's disgusting. Yeah.
There are people that I love that have passed away that were witnesses, and we don't just. You can sit and talk with a friend or something, but there's no moment that you get to have together with a bunch of people of like, man, it was so cool that he did this and he was like this and he said this and he was that. They don't do that, and I'm like, that's the beauty of who that was.
They don't give you that time. They don't give you that moment. It's literally just to prove people that can come on the stage to say a quick few things and then get into this person died and they died a believer. You should be a believer too.
Yeah, yeah.
It's horrible. I agree.
Um,
And it's been the same talk, by the way, for years. You can just find that talk structure online, which is pretty wild.
I heard one recently with my mom, and it's somebody I knew. It was an elder, and and I, hadn't seen him in a long time, but there's so much I knew about him. None of that was mentioned or talked about, So
Well, I just want to close out with this. Just one final question, unless Trent, you had anything.
I want to say something. You guys are minds I very much respect across time and for different reasons in different lives. And it's like not crazy to speak that way. Do you agree, Gork and Derek?
no, of course not.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you see the sensibility in that. You are fine men on this planet Earth. I appreciate you. And Gork, you especially. I've loved you truly like a brother and succeeded and failed with you, dude. Love you so much.
Yeah, I love you too, buddy.
I love you too.
I think to close out I guess my thought process is if you had just a small window and a platform to say something to people that maybe questioning their own beliefs or maybe just wanting to hear the wisdom of a middle-aged man that that has just been through some shit. What would you say to that person that's kind of going through the doldrums?
There is one other thing I want to say. I can close with it later, but again, I think when you're going through something that's emotionally challenging, there are those times where nothing is going to make it okay, and that's okay too. But I will say something that's fundamentally helped me is embracing failure, embracing the discomfort, and embracing because not every, but most beautiful epiphanies that I've had or moments of greater awareness, whatever you want to call it, have been preceded by dog shit times.
Yeah.
um,
I think it's a catalyst for humans to innovate.
so yeah, and like I was saying earlier, if you want to get to that freedom where you're in the sun and you're walking by yourself and you can do anything you want to do, just be ready to climb through some shit first.
Yeah.
Just
With good intentions, right?
with good intentions. I mean, I would hope so. If your intentions are bad, then you need to just go back and start from square one. But
Get back in that shit.
I don't believe most people have bad intentions. I think that things come into play. But yeah, I would just say embrace that. I think it's okay not to know. It's okay to be uncertain. It's okay to be like, hey, we'll find out. And something I'll say is that, like, if for any reason Christianity was the true religion, and I die and whatever it is, I get to heaven or wherever it is, whatever it is, and I have to confront the reality of what I'm going through, I'll just say, well, if God had told me, I would, I would have done it. Like, you can't put me on an earth and have 30,000 different denominations of Christianity and have all of these other thousands and thousands of religions and give me the ability to ration, use logic, all these other things, and then say, I have 100% faith that this is the truth. And if that was the game all along, if that's the game God's playing, I lose that game and I'm okay with that. But yeah, I would just say, like, embrace uncertainty. I watched Dogma in theaters last night.
Oh wow.
I don't know if you guys have seen Dogma,
Yeah.
but there's a little some of it's cheesy, but there's a quote I liked in it from, I think it's from Chris Rock's character, and he says people have these beliefs, they'll live and die for these beliefs, and I don't think that's the way to do it. I think you just have to have some good ideas, and he says ideas can change. People will die for their beliefs, and I agree with that. Have some good ideas, let those ideas grow. Don't ever get to a place where you're going to place everything on just one belief of something that's unknowable, and just let it happen. I mean, I hopefully in 10 years from now, I'll know cool new things I didn't know now, and I look forward to that.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. Well, you said you had one final thing and then I'll close out.
Yes. Well, I wanted to say, Trent, I think you're a tasteful man and you're classy. And I would have liked just like one cool Trent rant in this, but we'll have to table that for another episode. But it has been amazing to watch your journey with everything, because, like I said, based on times past, you just had this resentment, for anything that left the witnesses or whatever that was. I don't know, you could describe it better than I could. But to see you at a place now where you can dig into all of this nuanced stuff and dig into all of the complexity and be comfortable with how adaptable and malleable it is, I think is just amazing. And I think that just seeing your journey from afar is really inspiring. And
Yeah.
I wanted to say the same for Derek.
Thank you, brother.
And again, I'm going to project my interpretation, but I remember Derek was inactive, and then Derek came back, and I remember feeling as a witness frustrated with Derek because he was doing the witness stuff, and but he never got into it deeply, and I'm like, it's there, man. You got to dig into this. You gotta submit yourself to this and embrace it. And it just felt like he was doing what he had to do and nothing more. And now I feel like I can have a spectrum of conversation with Derek that I just couldn't have most of my life. And what a beautiful thing that is. And so I'm so proud of you guys.
And my feelings are echoed, back at you, man, eternally. And I appreciate you, and we'll have some good offline conversations and probably more pods too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate those kind words. And, I really truly feel like, just every day is just, taking in more information with an idea of curiosity. And I do mirror your idea, Gork, of being okay with not knowing, but just being curious and humble and just trying to do the best I can in this life course that I have right now. And in knowing that I'll stumble along the way because, the imperfect sin that was inherited from Adam and Eve. And
That's what it is.
and yeah, I'm just so grateful that we could chat, and I'm excited to hopefully have you on a little bit more and have you follow along with the podcast. Well, our intention is to continue to have other people on to hear kind of their message and hear their voice. I think it's really just really helpful and healthy to continue to talk to people and give them space to do so. So again, I'm so grateful to have you on, and really great that you were the first official guest. I think that's very important for me and for Trent. And yeah, I mean, you kind of have an online presence, so I don't know if you want to put anything out there. I know that we'll kind of put all your stuff in the notes, but anything you want to close out with?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for letting me do that. I would say if anybody likes indie, folk, alternative, sad bastard music, check out my album I dropped last year called A Modern Stride and Villainy. And it's not autobiographical, but there's elements of people I know and care about, including myself, in there. And so track 2 is one of the singles. It's called Armageddon. And it's a really interesting track because it's from the point of view of elders trying to shepherd somebody back into the congregation, and they're kind of appealing to this person's, I don't know, vanity or whatever. And so they're trying to use all these things to try to get them like, hey, there's a place for you here, people respect you, you could be, great speaker, minister, whatever. And so a lot of people that don't know the reference told me that they found that song very inspiring.
Oh,
And because it's from the elder's point of view, right? uh,
yeah,
and so
that's funny.
in a way, I think that actually makes the song better because it shows that there is something to what they're doing. And so there's some religious themes on the album. There's other themes, toxic love and all this other stuff. But even if you don't want to get into all the themes of it, just maybe enjoy the music. But it's Gork Music, Gork Music, one word, on Instagram. And you can check it out on Bandcamp or YouTube or whatever, Gork Music. And, if you like it, send me a message.
Awesome. All right. Well, with that, we thank you so much, and we hope to speak with you soon, my brother. And take care.
My brother. Love you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for joining us on this journey in this era. If you found today's episode valuable, please share it with someone who might need it. Check the podcast description for our socials and other information.
Please consider supporting us at Patreon at patreon.com/culturepod. If you'd like to tell your story, please contact us at cult.ture.pod@gmail.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and stay free.